Hey there everyone, this is Samuel Johnson and welcome back to the MCU Perspectives, and today we're going to be discussing the 25th film to be released as part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. Hold on a sec, sorry, I don't like how that looks. So yeah, since this is Shang-Chi's first solo foray into the MCU, I should probably talk about my history of the character prior to seeing this movie, and admittedly, it's very little. My first exposure to Shang-Chi was unknowingly in the pages of Ultimate Spider-Man, because there was an issue where Spider-Man got caught in the middle of like a giant gang war between a bunch of people, and Shang-Chi was one of the people involved in that. And at the time, I had absolutely no idea who this character was. Apparently, he knew Spider-Man, but I didn't really see the connection. Didn't know how they knew each other. I was just confused, and I didn't really understand who he was. It wasn't until I read like the Ultimate Marvel Team Up where I finally learned the gist of his character, how he why he has his abilities, his pretty much his general theme, his general consensus, pretty much just the general gist of who he was as a person and what the general theme of his stories were and what set him on his path. And I admit, I thought his backstory was actually really interesting, and I just thought to myself, huh, I think this guy sounds cool. Ultimately, he wasn't a character that I sought out either. He's not like this. It's not like the books, like his backstory grabbed me, but what I saw, I thought was interesting, and I admit that if I found a book with Shang-Chi in it, I wouldn't have put it down, because he kind of looked interesting. However, after that initial comic, I kind of didn't really see much of him throughout the Marvel universe. Like occasionally, I'd see him pop up here and there in older comics like when I saw Linkara's Rom Perspective, and apparently Rom at one point teamed up with Shang-Chi. But beyond that, my general exposure to him was minimal at best, so I really didn't have much exposure to him. However, I did know enough about him so that when I heard that they were going to be making a Shang-Chi movie, my reaction was essentially the reaction I had to his character. Okay, that's cool. Like, again, I had absolutely no idea who this... I only had the basics of his character, so I really didn't know what they were going to do with the movie, and the thing is, I mentioned before how when it comes to superheroes, I'm more a fan of the flashier, bigger names and so forth, and so, at the same time, while I was willing to have an open mind because it was the MCU, and the MCU has opened me up to more, to other kinds of superheroes and so forth, at the same time, I just thought, okay, this will probably be good, and I didn't think it would blow me away. Even when they revealed the villain for the piece was going to be the Mandarin, I kept thinking to myself, oh, that's cool. They did him dirty in Iron Man 3, so it'd be cool to actually see him done right. So, but that was just my consensus though, all throughout the film's production. Then I saw a preview for it when I went to see another movie, and I was hooked. The preview made the film look so damn good. I looked at that, I thought, holy shit, I need to see this movie right now. And that's how I felt as the film's release date kept getting closer. I kept thinking, I can't wait to see this movie. I just can't wait to see this movie. And I kept that energy up until I finally did go and see it about 2 weeks ago. And I was just blown away. I thought this film was so damn good, and I was just so glad to have seen it. And I'm just so, but yeah, before I actually gush about my feelings about the movie and talk about how awesome it is, we should probably talk about it, because is the film good for you? Do you want to go see it? Well, let's find out. And again, major spoilers ahead. I'm giving you this warning right now because this vlog is going to spoil the plot rotten. I don't hold anything back. Every single plot detail is going to be revealed, and like I said, at the time that I'm recording this, the film has been out for 2 weeks. So if you have not seen Shang-Chi and you want to go in unspoiled, turn off this vlog and go see it. I cannot stress this enough. Or just see it anyway, I don't know. But bottom line, yeah. Spoiling the film rotten, you've been warned, let's move on. So, before I actually get to the plot summary though, something I've noticed that the film is kind of deals with it, it's kind of in media res with its story. Like, the main plot, it does move forward, but when it comes to like Shang-Chi's backstory and everything about him, what set him on his path and etc., that's told in media res throughout the film. As such, we're just given like little snippets and pieces every here and there throughout the movie, and by the end we get enough pieces that we're able to put them all together and learn Shung's full backstory. So, but for the sake of the summary, I'm going to be talking about the past story first before I go on to the stuff that takes place in the modern day. So, again, yeah, you've been warned. So, as I mentioned before, the villain for this movie is the Mandarin. The real Mandarin. Not the guy played by Ben Kingsley. This guy is the real deal, and he is a badass. In this case, apparently he got his start as the Mandarin 1,000 years prior to the start of this movie. Like, they don't explain how he got his power, because the source of his power are the titular 10 rings. These metal bands that he wears on his arms, 5 for each arm. And we never find out where the rings came from. Like, if they came, like they say, some legends say he found them in a crater. Some say he found them in a tomb. Just bottom line, nobody knows where they came from, but what they do know is that whoever wields the 10 rings is gifted with immense power and immortality, or at the very least, they stop aging. And so, with the 10 rings, rather than using them for good, the Mandarin decided to use them to pretty much wipe away everything in his path. Pretty much anything he deemed a threat, he used the 10 rings to take down, and it got to the point where he was able to amass an entire army, which became, well, the terrorist organization, the 10 Rings. The same guys that kidnapped Tony Stark and Iron Man. As such, for like 1,000 years, the Mandarin continued using the 10 rings, both the bands and the organization, to pretty much rule the world from the shadows. Just eliminating figures that got in his way, destabilizing government, just in general being the ultimate crime boss, and nobody knew he existed. But, of course, as you do, when you've amassed so much power and you've pretty much just taken over the world, you get bored. And that's what happened to the Mandarin. And yeah, I should probably say this right now. He's not actually called the Mandarin in the movie. They say that he apparently had many names, and the Mandarin was just something that was given to Ben Kingsley's character as a figurehead, since he didn't know his real name. But this is but this guy is supposed to be the movie version of the Mandarin, so that's what I'm gonna keep calling him. So yeah, whatever. Well, yeah, like I said, he got bored, and so he decided that he wanted to explore other avenues of conquering. And so in his studies, he discovered a mystical realm called Ta Lo, which was filled with mystical creatures and mythical beings who practice an ancient mystical art of kung fu, and he wanted to pretty much go there and take it over. As such, while one of his advisors says, "Oh, we'll scope it out ahead of time," he says, "No, I'm just going to go there right now." And so he and his advisors drive to where Ta Lo is supposed to be, only to get caught up in a magic force mage, which ends up causing them to swerve off course and for their van to get thrown off a cliff, though the Mandarin managed to get out in time. As such, he goes back into the forest, and it's there that he meets a woman. And this woman is supposed to be a resident of Ta Lo, and he demands to know where it is and so forth, and of course she refuses to tell him, and since he's a crime boss, essentially no is not a word he likes, so he tries fighting her, and she actually outmaneuvers him, and throughout their fighting, while it is clear they're fighting against each other, the fighting starts looking more like a dance, and as they go along, you can start to see like the hostility disappear from his eyes, and same goes for her. And just as they keep fighting, it's clear that they're both evenly matched, until at one point he tries launching the rings at her, and she's able to use her style of kung fu, along with her mystical Ta Lo powers, to actually take the 10 rings and use them to blast him back, ultimately escaping while he's knocked out. And the Mandarin is smitten. Just from that experience, he just started to feel love. Like, he actually looked at this woman and thought, "Oh my god, I gotta see her again." And see her again he did. He would consistently come back to these forests and meet up with her, and rather than fight, they just talked. They shared their lives with each other. They grew closer and bonded to the point where they actually did start to fall in love, and both realized they wanted to be with each other. And as such, while the lady, I apologize, I do not remember her name. While the lady did try to convince her did try to convince her family in Ta Lo to let him stay. The dude is a 1,000-year-old crime boss with magical armbands on his wrist and blood of thousands probably on his hands. So this guy is, they don't want him there. So as such, she decides, fine, then I'm leaving. As such, the Mandarin likewise decides this is someone he wants to grow old with, and so he takes off the 10 rings and then just files them away. He doesn't get rid of them, he just puts them away and never uses them. And so he and this woman end up building a life with each other to the point where eventually they do have kids. In this case, Shang-Chi and a sister. Her name is Xialing. As such, for many years, Shang-Chi and Xialing were raised by their parents, and they actually lived in a very happy household. Like they would goof off with their parents. Their parents would teach them teach them kung fu. They would meditate with each other, and they were just all around happy. Like they make our even Shang-Chi's mom gave him and Xialing these jade necklaces that she said would lead them home one day. And of course, both of them wear them wherever they go. And so, just overall, their lives are all happy and sweet and kind until they're not. As one day, while the Mandarin is out just getting supplies or groceries or whatever, Shang-Chi's mom is left to take care of the kids, and something from the Mandarin's past comes back to haunt them. Specifically, a group called the Iron Gang, here to essentially settle a debt. As such, while the Mandarin isn't here, they'll settle for pretty much anybody, and though the mother does plead to let the kids go, and the Iron Gang does concede, but Shang-Chi's mom does at least make it clear she ain't going down without a fight. And while she does try and tell Shang-Chi, you're fine. It's like you are me, you are your father, and you have to accept that. I'm proud of you. Those are ultimately the last words that she says, because unfortunately, while she is still very skilled, they made the thing with Ta Lo powers, they only work when you're near Ta Lo. And unfortunately, she's been away from that place for many, many years. And while the Iron Gang doesn't look like a lot at first, it's clear that there's a lot more come in, and it's clear she's fucking dead. And sure enough, that's what happens. While the battle ends with the Iron Gang pretty much obliterated, or at least like the ones that came to their home, unfortunately, her life is snuffed out as well. And by the time the Mandarin comes home, he finds Shang-Chi holding her dead body in his arms. With this, the Mandarin is just rightfully pissed off, and even tells Shang, she said that I could change, that there was a good man in me, but she was wrong. And as such, the Mandarin takes the 10 rings back out and puts them back on. And it's clear he's out for blood. And as such, he takes Shang with him, who at this point I have to remind you is a kid. So yeah, kind of a big thing. He takes Shang with him to where the Iron Gang where the Iron Gang sort of mitigates, which is like this backwater hole in the wall type of deal. And he pretty much just wipes the floor with them, killing every member. And while he's not able to get any information out of who their boss is and what's happened, he makes it clear he's not going to stop until the Iron Gang is dust beneath his heel. And he asks Shang if he will help him, to which Shang agrees. As such, over the course of Shang's childhood and adolescence, the Mandarin pretty much brought him back into the 10 rings and trained him to be a killer. Trained him in various ways. Trained him in every single form of martial arts known to man, and figure out the best way to kill a man. Whereas with his sister, he just threw her on the sidelines, because in his own words, apparently he couldn't even look at her because she reminded him of his mother. And so he pretty much just neglected Xialing while he trained Shang-Chi. And as such, while Xialing does learn to fight, unfortunately she had to teach herself, while in the meantime, while Shang's relationship with his father does still remain somewhat positive, I say somewhat because he's still training him to be a killer, Shang does start kind of get more into the role as he grows older. And while he does still try to be there for his sister, things do finally come to a head when Shang turned 14, as Shang had now reached his peak at this point, and so the Mandarin, now having located the head of the Iron Gang, gave Shang a knife and told him, I know where your mother's killer is, go get him, and then when you come back, we'll lead the 10 rings together. And as such, that's what Shang did. He took the plane out, and we don't actually see this flashback, but yeah, in Shung's own words, he did end up killing the head of the Iron Gang. And once he did, it suddenly hit him what he did, and he was horrified. He was disgusted with what he did, and he realized that if his mother could see him now, she wouldn't like the person that he became. And it's at this point that Shung realized, I need to get out of this. As such, rather than going back to the Ten Rings, Shung went into hiding. He moved to San Francisco, changed his name to Sean, and so for 10 years, he just kind of lived his life in the background, having just kind of low jobs, just generally living a regular man's life as he tried to put his past behind him. Unfortunately, this did leave a negative impact with certain family members, because his sister was literally the only family he had left, and likewise, he was her only family. And so when he didn't come back, she eventually ran away herself, and she's resented him for years, though he still does miss her, as a few months prior to the movie starting, he did get a postcard that was apparently addressed to her, and he does keep it around. As such, this is where the present day story comes on. As we see that in the modern day, Shung is just essentially trying to live his life, as he's now a valet working at a fancy hotel, and his best friend is a woman named Katie, played by Awkwafina, and who is awesome in this movie. Though again, Awkwafina is awesome and everything, so yeah. And pretty much they're just the best of friends, and Katie is just pretty much just this troublemaker. She likes to do, case in point, this guy comes in with an expensive Ferrari, and the first thing she wants to do is take it for a joyride. When they know they're supposed to go to bed, they instead go to a karaoke bar and sing themselves silly before passing out drunk. They're just two goofball friends who just love having fun with each other. And they're just really it's clear that they're just they're inseparable. It's just great. So it's clear, and on top of that, Shung has built better relationships. He not only is Katie's friend, but he's also friends with this lady whose name I do not remember. Who when he and Katie first met, that she apparently drove her on. So she's a regular friend, though she's, in her own words, she grew up and became a lawyer, even got married. And Shung does have a strong relationship with Katie's family, who do treat him pretty much like he's one of their own. But of course, the past does eventually catch up with you, as one day while Shung and Katie are on the bus going to work, Shung gets ambushed by gang members from the Ten Rings who demand his pendant. Of course, Shung isn't willing to hand it to them, so that's when things get violent, and Shung's got to bust out the kung fu and just kick their asses royally. Of course, while they do put up a good fight, which results in the brakes of the bus being severed, and the bus swerving out of control until it eventually gets split in half. Despite all of his efforts, Shung did end up losing the pendant to one of the goons in the Ten Rings, a muscle-bound guy with a razor blade with a machete razor whatever for an arm named Razor Blade. And as such, and the thing is, while Shung was fighting Razor Blade, he actually said something to Shung which resonated with him, and that is, you and your sister deserve what's coming. No, Razor Fist. Sorry, his name's not Razor Blade, it's Razor Fist. Sorry about that, that's my fault. So yeah, Shung heard that, and immediately he's panicking. Of course, Katie wants to know what the hell is going on, how did he bust out those kung fu moves. That's not the Shung she knows. And so, she says that those people were, she does tell her about the Ten Rings, how those people were with his father, and how he's got to go to Macau because he needs to see his sister because of what Razor Fist said. And Katie, she pretty much realizes whatever you're embroiled in, I want to know, I want to be there for you, so I'm going with you. As such, while Shung is a little reluctant, she does worm her way in, and so they both travel to Macau together, and Shung does explain most of his backstory, how his mother was killed, how he was sent out on a hit, but when it comes to the detail of it, when he killed a man, Shung lies and says that he couldn't go through with it. However, but as such, the two eventually do make it to Macau, and they're using the postcard that Shung got from his sister as a guideline, and so they're able to go to the address that's listed on the card, and it looks like it's just a building under construction, and once they get inside, it turns out that it's an underground fighting ring. The place is called the Golden Dagger, and pretty much just this place is where people go to just kick ass and fight. People make bets on the dark web to see who will win, and as you win more fights, you eventually get up until eventually you get to the center ring where the big fights are happening. And actually, kind of what I like when Shang and Katie get there, in terms of the people in the center ring, are Wong from Doctor Strange and the Abomination from the Incredible Hulk, who for some reason now has those ear fin flap whatevers on the side of his head. So okay, that's a thing. So yeah, that's a thing. But yeah, Wong eventually wins the battle, and the guy who's like in charge of coordinating all the fights says that he wants Shang to go in. Of course, Shang's like, no, I'm not here to fight. I'm here to find my sister. But the guy tells her, no, you already signed up, because when Shang and Katie first arrived, he was given something to sign, and yeah, apparently that was a release form. And the thing is, they want Shang to go into the center ring because he's internet famous, because while Shang was having his fight with the Ten Rings goons on the bus, there was this one guy who was filming it and posted it online. So Shang is now viral, so they think there'll be big bucks to send him in. As such, Shang doesn't really want to, but the guy says if you go in and fight, I'll help you find who you're looking for. And so Shang reluctantly goes in and gets ready to fight his opponent, who, no, is not the Abomination or Wong, but is instead this robed figure. This robed figure who steps into the ring, and when she pulls off her robe, it turns out it's Xialing. And she ain't happy to see her brother. The two of them end up fighting, and she ends up royally kicking his ass, but Shang is able to tell her that their father is after them. As such, once the fight is over, she brings him into her office, and she makes it clear on no uncertain terms that she does not want him here, and she doesn't need him here, and so pretty much just hit the road. He does, however, warn her about the father coming for the pendant, that and that they already got his, so they'll probably come for hers. And he does ultimately, and even that he points out, well, if you want nothing to do with me, why'd you send me that postcard? Only for Xialing to admit that she has no idea what he's talking about. And that's when the club is attacked by the Ten Rings. And yep, this was a trap. As such, while Xialing does manage to escape, Shang and, unfortunately, Katie are left to fend off the ninjas from the Ten Rings, and Katie herself is mostly just trying to get away from them, though the fight does end up going out into the scaffolding outside the building, which leads to a funny scene where she tries briefly distracting a ninja by singing Hotel California. But ultimately, Xialing does come back and does offer Shang aid, as they both fight off the ninjas, and while Zhang does try to interrogate one to know what his father's doing, Xialing just pushes them off the scaffolding. Ultimately, though, there is still one surviving ninja, and Xialing does go to make sure that Katie doesn't get killed. While Shang goes to chase after the ninja, and the both of them end up getting into this big battle, into this fight scene where Shang ultimately does get the upper hand, but just for a brief second he grabs the ninja's kunai and almost stabs him, only for suddenly something to rope and grab his arm. And that something is his father, who is there, and of course the thing he used were the Ten Rings. As such, the father looks at Shang and is actually happy to see him. As he even says, I told my men they wouldn't be able to kill you if they tried. I'm glad I was right. As such, he embraces his son in a hug, and we see the ninjas have captured Xialing and Katie, and so he tells them all, well, let's go home. And so the Mandarin ends up taking Shang, Xialing, and Katie back to the home base of the Ten Rings in the mountains, and so they all go there, and that we learn more about. And of course, that's where Xialing admits the whole how she was neglected thing to Katie. But while they're sitting down for dinner, the Mandarin does open up more about everything about what he's planning to Shang, to his kids, and Katie. Telling how he met Shang and Xialing's mother, how he fell in love, how he gave up the rings, and how after her death he kind of lost himself. Even after Shang and Xialing ran away, he kind of was trying to find any way he could to reconnect with his wife's heritage, and he found a way. Well, so after dinner, he shows them to this room full of all these ancient scrolls and so forth, and it turns out, and he found something about a strange gateway that was apparently in Ta Lo. And when he found this, he began to hear his wife's voice, just whispering to him, calling to him, and the voice told him that she was there in the gate. And so the Mandarin thought that his wife wasn't actually dead, that that the people of Ta Lo came back, took her, and locked her up in there as punishment, and she's still there to this day. As such, he wants to go back to Ta Lo and break the gate down and set her free. Of course, Shang and Xialing think he's crazy, and because they saw their mother get killed. And they think, there's no way she's calling out to you. There's no way that she can do that. And you say, well, really? Well, then why'd she leave clues? Case in point, which is where the pendants come in. You see, in the shrine, there's this dragon head set up on one of the walls, and so the Mandarin puts both of the necklaces in the eyes, and suddenly it causes the dragon to weep water, and which turns into this tidal wave, which floats in the air for a second before coalescing on the ground to resemble the moving maze that was the forest that the Mandarin's people got stuck in before. Only now it turns out that it's got a pathway that apparently leads to Ta Lo. And once a year, and pretty much just once a year, there is a pathway that will open up in the maze that will lead directly to Ta Lo without any problems. The thing is, though, if in order to use it, you have to not only know what time of year that it will open, but what the path is. And with those necklaces, he now knows where the path is, and he already knows when the time is in 3 days. As such, he wants to just bring the 10 rings and charge into Ta Lo and get his wife back. But even Shang says, well, what if they don't let you go into what if they don't let you open the gate? And the Mandarin's response? They'll just burn the place down. Of course, Shang thinks this is nuts. He's just, like, why the hell would he do this? He's gonna just rush in on a fool's errand to try and save his mother? And the Mandarin does not take kindly to this, as he immediately just grabs Shang-Chi and flings him into the crowd. Same with his daughter. As such, he realizes that they're going to try and stand his way, so he locks them and Katie up so they can't stop him. As such, while the group does discuss whether he actually is insane or if their mother really is alive, they all realize that they kind of need to get out of there and get to Ta Lo before the Mandarin does. Unfortunately, they don't really know how. That is till they get some unexpected help. You see, while they're sitting in the cell, they hear someone chanting and ranting in the background, and farther away in the cell. And when the three go to investigate, who do they find? But the fake Mandarin from Iron Man 3. Yeah, I actually, believe it or not, I'm glad they had this, because after Iron Man 3, apparently they released this short movie that focused on the fake Mandarin while he was imprisoned, and he was apparently being interviewed, and at the end of the short movie, the 10 Rings broke him out and told him, we're going to bring you to meet the real Mandarin. And so, of course, that never got followed up on again because, well, the Mandarin was kind of old news at that point. But since the Mandarin is the villain of this movie, I like that they're actually revisiting it and showing what happened to him. And it turns out they did plan that the 10 Rings did want to off this guy since he appropriated their boss's image. But the thing is, just as he was getting tied up to be executed, he began quoting Shakespeare, and the people of the 10 Rings thought he was a riot. And so they decided to let him live, and so every once a week, they have him do a one-man show for them, and essentially, as Katie puts it, he's the court jester. And that's how he's been living for the last few years, just entertaining the 10 Rings with his quote-unquote skills. However, he's not alone. As it turns out, while the Mandarin was expediting the moving forest, it turns out he grabbed this creature, this 6-legged thing with 2 sets of wings and no face that the fake Mandarin took to calling Morris. And I love the group's reaction. They're just once Morris comes walking out, they're like, "Holy shit! What is that? Why doesn't it have a face?" It's actually funny. But yeah, this thing is essentially the fake Mandarin's only friend, and if you expect me to actually call him by his real name, I, honest to God, don't remember it. They said it many times in the movie, but I didn't take notes of it, so sorry. But the thing is, apparently the fake Mandarin has spent so much time with Morris that they kind of have an unspoken connection, which really means that he can actually understand Morris. And when Morris sees Shang-Chi and Xialing, he recognizes that they're their mother's daughter. And apparently, and as such, it knows they're friendly and that they're nice, but Morris, through the fake Mandarin, tells them that he wants to go home. Of course, they say, well, we don't know the way back, but turns out Morris does. While there isn't a direct path straight to Ta Lo, Morris does know a way through the maze, and if they can get out of there, he can show them how. As such, the group realizes the group realizes that they need to take the fake Mandarin and Morse with them, and so with Xiaoling's help, because she knows this building in and out, and apparently the Mandarin has these underground catacombs, which is how she escaped the first time. They manage to escape their cell and steal a car, specifically Razor Fists, which is great. And while they do end up encountering some hindrance from the Ten Rings, they do manage to escape and reach the forest. As such, through the fake Mandarin, Morris is able to direct the group through the moving forest, and while they do almost get crushed by the trees, they do eventually manage to get out and reach Ta Lo. And give credit where it's due, I love the reveal of this place. It looks just so peaceful and beautiful and serene, and like what the legends say, it's full of all these weird, mystical, and kind of beautiful creatures, like these seven-tailed white foxes, this strange horses, more creatures like Ta Lo, these firebirds, what I think might be phoenixes. Like, pretty much just this entire thing, like, the whole place just looks breathtaking and beautiful, and everyone in the car is in awe. As such, as they're driving along, they eventually come up to a village where it turns out the entire village is populous, so they're to greet him, or at least the warriors. As such, Shang and co. do end up getting out of the car, and while they do preach peace, they don't, because these kids are the Mandarin's children, they tell them to just get the hell out. So they are about to leave, but the people guarding the village are told to stand down as someone comes up. And the someone turns out to be their aunt, who is actually happy to see them because, well, she's been separated from her sister for a long time, but these are her niece and nephew, so she's just glad to see them again, and it's all lovey-dovey and sweet. I love it. I love it all. As such, it's from here where we learn the full details about what's really going on. You see, thousands of years ago, Ta Lo was a big, prosperous place. Like, it had cities that were a mix of culture and art. It was super advanced. Its people lived in peace, but one day their world was attacked by something called the Dweller of Darkness. This giant Cthulhu-esque monster who would suck out the souls of the living to empower himself. And while the armies of Ta Lo did their best to fight him off, he was just too strong. And one by one, as he conquered Ta Lo, he eventually wanted to make his way to our world, so to speak. As such, at the zenith of the battle, the Ta Lo's guardian dragon, the Great Protector, entered the battle, and with the dragon's assistance, they were able to fend back the Dweller of Darkness and his forces until they were eventually locked away behind the gate that the Mandarin wants to open up. Yeah, it turns out that the Dweller of Darkness has tried getting out many, many times over the years. Like, while he can't actually get out beyond the gate, he is able to reach out. He's able to reach out to the people with like immense power and abilities, and essentially whisper to them promising them their heart's desire if they come to Ta Lo and break the gate down. And while those people have come and failed, the group ultimately, Shang and Xiaoling's aunt does realize that with the 10 rings at his disposal, the Mandarin might be able to break the gate, and if he does that, the Dweller of Darkness would be free. So, yeah, the group, as such, realizes that Shang and Xiaoling realize their dad's being had, but the thing is, he's not in a state of mind where he'll listen to anybody, so they realize they do still need to stop him. As such, Shang and Xiaoling and Katie as well, end up working with the forces of Ta Lo to essentially prepare for the arrival of the 10 rings. All of them are trained, and pretty much Shang-Chi is taught by his aunt the ways of his parents and what the fighting style of his mother, and so forth. We see Xiaoling fighting alongside the forces because in Ta Lo, both men and women are trained side by side, so everyone's a badass, and so she's taught to use this like rope flail or whatever it is. I don't know what the name of it is called, but it was a weapon that she trained herself in, so she was taught to use that. And we see Katie being taught how to use a bow and arrow. And it's all just nice stuff, as we see some good character stuff with each of them, with Shang-Chi kind of trying to learn the fighting style his mother used to beat his dad, and kind of falling on his ass. Katie talking to to her trainer, as she talks about how she doesn't really have anything in life, that every time she tries something she just stops and then tries something else, never succeeding. And of course the stuff with Xialing and how she wasn't treated as an equal growing up. And of course it all is nice character stuff that helps build on their journeys. But it all comes to a head the night before the Ten Rings are supposed to arrive, as Shang-Chi does end up thinking the night that his mother died over in his head, and that's when he finally tells Katie that he wound up actually killing the man that his dad sent him after. And so he realizes that his dad pretty much made him a killer, and because of his dad's connections, their mother died, and now he's come to destroy his mother's home. And so Shang realizes that if he wants to stop his dad, he's probably going to have to kill him. Something that horrifies Katie when she hears this. As such, the next day, the force of the Ten Rings arrive, and so Shang, Xialing, Xialing, and the rest of the forces of Ta Lo all are prepped for battle. And it's here we also get Shang in his superhero outfit, so to speak, which something they use in Ta Lo. All of their weapons are forged with dragon scales, which all glow red and are very powerful, and they use it for various materials, so it's used for Shung's outfit. So I like it. It's red. It's just sleek. It definitely looks like a superhero outfit while still also looking like a martial arts outfit. So I think it's cool. His sister's outfit is nice too, but I prefer Shung's because red. So yeah, I like it. As such, the Mandarin comes knocking at the door, and of course he's demanding that they hand over his wife, and saying, you let me through and I set her free. But of course they're telling her she's gone, you can't find her back there, leave now. Of course he's not listening, and while Shang and Xialing's aunt tries to reason with him, saying, I wish we could have her back, I really do, I want her back just as much as you do, but she's gone, the Mandarin still ain't listening, and so he orders the Ten Rings to burn the village down. As such, the forces of Ta Lo and the Ten Rings end up clashing, and it leads to this giant battle between both forces, and everyone's just going all out, both sides not holding back as best they could. And in the meantime, the Mandarin is just walking through the crowd, and while Shang does his best to fight off more Ten Rings guards, he ultimately does break away from the battle and follow his father to a monastery where they honor the dead. As such, while his father stops to pray to the shrine for his wife, Shang does go in and just try and is blocking his father's way to the gate, which the gate's over this giant lake as it's built into a mountain. And so of course the Mandarin tells, and so the Mandarin asks if Shang is there to kill him, and Shang says, I will. It's I will, and so he's like, of course you are. And they get into this giant fight, and while Shang does put up a decent fight and does manage to hold off his father bit by bit, it's clear it's still one-sided. His father is still too powerful with the Ten Rings, and Shang, for all his skill and everything his father and mother taught him, is no match for him. And it gets even worse when both sides start employing psychological torture, with his dad saying, and I actually did write this down, you spent your entire life afraid, always running, always hiding, and even blaming Shang for the death of his mother because she died while he just watched. And to which Shang responds, even if you could bring her back, what makes you think she'd want anything to do with you? And this pisses the Mandarin off something fierce, as he manages to land a blow so powerful that it launches Shang through the air and directly in the middle of the lake, knocking him unconscious. And so the Mandarin ends up doing a giant jump across the lake to the gate, and of course he's still hearing his wife's voice telling him, set me free, set me free. And so he begins pounding on the gate, just the whole structure shaking and rattling, and as he's shaking it, more of the dwellers' minions start seeping out and flying to the village. And of course, once the citizens of Ta Lo sees this, they immediately try stopping the fight, and they try and reason with the Ten Rings people. We gotta stop this fight. The dweller's out. We need to work together to stop him. And while Razor Fist tries writing them off because they're the Ten Rings, something can stop them, they're immediately discredited as one of the dweller's minions ends up attacking a ninja, sucking out his soul, and when they try hitting it with their various weapons, they're ineffective at best. Sorry, I was thirsty. As such, the Ten Rings decide, okay, fine, we do need to work together, and so the citizens of Talos share their weapons to the Ten Rings, and they try their best to fend off the monsters. Unfortunately, and of course, as things are getting worse, Katie, who was just kind of left on the sidelines because she just learned how to use a bow and arrow the day before, decides, screw it, I'm going in. And admittedly, what I like is that no one tries to stop her this time because, let's be honest, the gates of hell are kind of opening, and at this point they can probably get all hands on deck, because at this point, even if they do, no matter, at this point they could die anyway, so why not? And unfortunately, no one knows where Shang is, and yeah, he's still just kind of floating there in the sea as he starts losing consciousness little by little. However, as he's floating down, he begins remembering the last words his mother said to him, how she's proud of him, how he is everything about how he is her and his father. And as those memories go through his head, these bubbles from under the water come up, and they manage to give him enough oxygen that he wakes up. And as he goes deeper down, the bubbles start getting more and more sparse, until we see that he's not the only thing down there. As Shang floats there, we see something circling around him, and thus we see the head of the Great Protector, who immediately flies out of the water with Shang-Chi riding on his back. And it is just such a badass scene as we see the Great Protector flying around and just blowing right through the Dweller's minions, eating them, knocking them aside. It's just, and all the while Shang is just riding on its back. It's just such a kick-ass scene, and it's just so glorious and beautiful, especially with the use of music. It feels so fitting. It feels so nice. It's just eye candy, and I love it. As such, while they're able to fend most of the monsters, Shang-Zan is able to call out to him and tell him, you gotta go stop your father. If he breaks down the gate, or the Dwellers bring him enough souls, the minions bring the Dweller enough souls, he's gonna break out of there. And so the Great Protector flies to the mountain, and Shang jumps off, and once again, he and his father end up fighting. Only this time, Shang does try to take his mother's words to heart, as they both end up getting into a fight, and we see Shang utilizing his mother's fighting style. I'm sorry, I'm looking back at this just for something. And as such, throughout the fight, we see that it's a lot more evenly matched now, as they're able to trade blow for blow, and Shang is able to maneuver around the 10 rings, and just little by little, he and his father are getting something on each other, until eventually his father launches like 5 of the rings from one of his arm to Shang, and because of Shang's practice, instead of the rings knocking him aside, he manages to gain control of them, with the rings just floating around him, obeying his every command. And so with those on his side, Shang is able to start outmaneuvering the Mandarin. They both start trading blows as the Mandarin throws one set of rings at him. He's able to block them with another. He's able to go them together. They wind up getting into a tug of war over the rings. And whenever his dad launches an attack, he's able to block it, or vice versa. It just keeps going on and on and on until his dad launches the other set of rings at Shang. But again, they don't come back. And when the dust clears, all 10 rings are floating around Shang with little to no effort. And so, while Shang does get the rings like all prepared and looking like he's getting ready to blast his dad like his mother did all those years ago, his dad like gets into a fighting stance, still ready to fight, only for Shang to just throw the rings to the side. At which point he tells his dad, "Dad, please, your family needs you." And while his dad still tries to plead with him, saying, I want to get her back, she's behind that door, Shang says, "I wish that were true. I really do, but she's gone." And they just have this moment where the fighting stops, and they both look just tired and kind of broken by all this. But unfortunately, it turns out the Mandarin did too much damage, or the Dweller's minions were able to get enough souls, because despite the Mandarin no longer trying to break open the gate, they still hear Shang and the Mandarin still hear the voice of the Mandarin's wife / Shang's mother. Again, I'm sorry I don't remember her name. I really wish I remembered it. And it's just screaming, "Let me out! Let me out! Let me out! Let me out!" Until eventually the gate is blown open, and out comes the Dweller of Darkness, looking just as giant and monstrous and horrifying as you would expect. And once the Dweller comes out, the first thing he does is dive bomb at Shang and the Mandarin. The Mandarin is able to get the Ten Rings and push Shang aside before he can grab him, but unfortunately this results in the Dweller grabbing the Mandarin instead. And because the Dweller is the sucker of souls, it begins immediately sucking the Mandarin's soul out. And of course Shang is just left helpless to watch, but the Mandarin just kind of looks at him solemnly, and it pretty much just is like, it's okay. It's like an unspoken, it's okay, it's fine, I'm proud of you moment, as just before the Mandarin dies, he sends the rings flying off his arms and right to Shang, where they fly onto his arms, and what I like is that the color ends up changing. And with that, the Mandarin is dead, the Dweller having sucked out his soul. As such, while Shang is just mortified by this, he is actually ready to still fight the Dweller of Darkness, but thankfully he doesn't have to directly confront it because the Great Protector comes in and starts fighting with the Dweller. And as such, while Shang and Xialing, because Xialing was actually flying on the Great Protector's back because they had like a brief moment, and so she wanted to go help her brother. Unfortunately, the Dweller is just too strong. Like, even when the Great Protector is able to trap the Dweller in this giant water funnel, more of its followers begin dropping more souls into its gullet, and it's able to be so powerful enough to break out of the funnel, and immediately starts trying to suck out the soul of the Great Protector, which is a big no-no because it's a friggin' dragon and the source of all power for Ta Lo. So if it goes, there is nothing that can stop There is nothing that can stop the Dweller. As such, thankfully, they do manage to stop it before it can get through, because Katie was told that they had to shoot for the throat, since that's where it was sucking souls. Though while her mentor gets killed by the Dweller's minions, Katie is able to successfully shoot off a arrow that hits the Dweller in the throat, allowing it to escape. And on top of that, as the Great Protector is flying around, Shang and Xialing end up working in tandem with the Guardian to once more trap the Dweller in a funnel. They end up tying it up in place. They end up tying it with that little rope thing that Xialing had. And so, with the 10 rings, Shang is able to send them flying, is able to blast them right into the Dweller's mouth. And you can see them glowing inside its chest as you see Shang manipulating them, and you can see the Dweller writhing in pain, and Shang is just kind of floating / falling through the air as he's controlling them. And finally he pulls them back, and they rip the Dweller apart. It's just goddamn glorious, and I love it. As such, with the fighting over, the people of Ta Lo hold a little funerary service for those that fell in battle, for mothers and fathers, the sons and daughters, and of course, they of course light candles for the Mandarin and the Mandarin and Shang and Xialing's mother. And so everyone, it's of course solemn, but at the end, everyone is glad. Of course, there's still triumph. The Dweller has been defeated once and for all, and the world is now thankfully at peace. And so the film ends with Shang and Katie going to talk to their friend and relating the whole adventure to her, and she just don't believe a word of it, because 2 weeks ago they were valets, and even though everything they had was true, they really don't have any proof to back it up, and so she just thinks that they're making fun of her, and this is just further proof that they're acting childish, only for things to immediately get stopped, only for her to immediately be proven wrong, as suddenly a magic gateway opens up behind her, and out pops Wong, who's asking for Shang-Chi. And when Shang says, "I'm here," he says, "Okay." It's like, "Hey, do you have the 10 rings?" Shang says, "Yes." And I said, "Good, come with me." "Oh, you too." We went to Katie. And so Shang and Katie immediately leave the table, tell their friend that they'll call her, and the film ends with them stepping through the gateway to follow Wong. So, yeah. But of course, this is Marvel, so we still have our after credit scenes, and the first one is actually with Wong in like that library where Strange was trained. And it turns out that what they're doing is that he's analyzing the rings, because apparently these things are not in the Magic Codex. They're something else, something that they really don't expect. And the thing is, they're not alone there, as Wong has actually opened up like these virtual calls with Bruce Banner, who for some reason is no longer the Hulk, but his arm is in a sling from when he used the Infinity Gauntlet in Endgame. So I don't know what that is, but they're there, as well as Captain Marvel, who has let her hair grow out again, who has let her hair grow out. And the thing is, nobody really knows what these things are, especially because they are, because while it's well, because what and the thing is, while their scans show that they're not exactly magic, they're also clearly something else, because while the Mandarin may have had them for 1,000 years, it's clear they're far older than that. And the thing is, once Shang got his hands on them, they were sending out a signal, something so strong that even the people at, again, sorry, I forgot what the place was called, could feel it. And unfortunately, it's still sending out a signal to where nobody knows. But until they find out, the group realizes that they need to keep Shang and Katie in the know, because these things are powerful, and since Shang is the now new owner of them, he's now pretty much part of the universe, so to speak. As such, Captain Marvel and Bruce hang up. Wong tells Shang and Katie to go home and get some rest, only for Shang to decide, and the next scene we see is Shang, Katie, and Wong all singing a karaoke version of Hotel California, which is just, I love it. But again, we still have our other ending, because the thing is, in the actual ending to the movie, Shang said that his sister had gone back to the Ten Rings base to dismantle it. But the thing is, when we check in on Xialing while she's at the base, it turns out she's not dismantling it at all. She's rebranding, as we see her allowing both men and women to train there, keeping on several of the hired goons and we see her even changing the layout of the outside of the building, putting up satellite dishes, wireless towers, and graffitiing the walls. And it's pretty much making clear Xialing is sitting in the captain's chair, and she ain't giving it up anytime soon. So, yeah. That was Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. My thoughts on it? As I said at the beginning of this video, I fucking love this movie. It is amazing. Like, just downright awesome in every sense of the word. And there's just so much about it that works. And I think and the first thing I'm going to talk about, I love for starters, the acting and characters. Every single performance given in this movie is done perfectly, executed perfectly. I love seeing all the main characters working off of each other, and whenever things are going wrong, and as things go along, you can see how everything is affecting them, and they managed to actually manage to emote it perfectly. And hold on a second, sorry about that, was doing a check. Yeah, but Simu Liu, who plays Shang-Chi in this movie, does a great job with the role, managing to emote it perfectly, showcasing like Shang-Chi as a slacker, as an emotionally torn young man, as a righteous soul just wanting to do the right thing, someone who's and ultimately, by the end, just seeing how far he's come, and seeing all these various personas all operating all together, and seeing him not just be one of these things, but all of them, it's just, he plays the role perfectly. And the rest of the cast does so well, too. The actor for the Mandarin, I think, executes the role brilliantly, making you feel sympathetic for him when you need to, but also showing just how much of a powerhouse performance this really is. By showing, like, when he gets, like, because when he's pleasant, he does genuinely feel pleasant, even when you know this guy's probably secretly planning how to kill you. But when he's pissed, he makes it clear he is pissed. And he has this, like, serene, calm fury to him. Like, when he starts talking, and you piss him off, you will know right there. And it's just, I love it. It works perfectly. And, of course, Awkwafina as Katie. Awkwafina is amazing in everything she does, and in this movie is no exception. And the thing is, I'm sorry to... And I'm trying to remember her name. Hold on a second. Sorry about that. Essentially, Awkwafina's character in this movie is what Kat Dennings' character wanted to be in the Thor movie. It's just that comical, emotional support sidekick in the movie that's there to help out and provide comic banter. But whereas Kat Dennings' character was annoying, and to Kat Dennings, if you're watching this, I don't dislike you. I don't think you're a bad person. I am so sorry. I'm not trying to be rude. I really am not. But there probably is no nice way to say this. So I am so sorry. I'm sure you're a very nice and talented person. So if you happen to see this, I'm really, really, really sorry. Please don't hate me. But yeah, Awkwafina's character in this movie is what Kat Dennings' character wanted to be in the Thor movies. But she actually pulls it off perfectly. She gets the full range of emotion. She can be silly and stupid when she wants to be, but she can also be funny and quippy. She can be sarcastic. She can get angry. She can be serious. She can be dopey. And she hits the full range of them, and it works perfectly. And her skill is still just perfect, is done well throughout the whole movie as well. Especially when you see her, especially with the scene when Shang admits that he thinks he needs to kill his father. Like, you see her, like, the concern on her face when she goes to talk to Shang and he opens up to her, but then the instant he says, I have to kill him, you see that concern turn to horror. Because she's like, no, you can't, like, without words, you see, you know, like, she wants to just say, don't do that, you're not that monster. But at the same time, she also knows, I can't stop him. It's just it's done and executed perfectly, and all the actors in the, and the thing, and just with that, and the thing is, and like I said, all the actors in this movie turn in great performances, turn out excellent roles, excellent characters, and everything just feels so perfect in how it's executed. And to top it all, and another bonus, the humor. The movie does not emphasize humor as heavily as other Marvel films do, but when it does get to humor, 90% of the jokes land perfectly. They are put in the best places to actually be funny. They all operate perfectly. They all have great comedic timing and payoff. Everyone's comedic reactions are just spot on and definitely the zeitgeist to make you just start laughing. And most of them just manage to hit home. I say most of them because occasionally there is a joke that just falls flat, like I mentioned how Shung's bus fight with the Ten Rings goons got put online. There's a running, like, how that was executed was we saw the guy who was streaming it doing a running commentary of Shung in the fight, and while the fight itself was awesome, that guy was annoying. Like, it just wasn't funny. And while the humor did come from other people getting annoyed with him as well, it definitely didn't felt like it was disrupting the flow of the scene and just did not make it that entertaining to watch, even if the video feed did come back into play later. But like I said, 90% of the humor does work in this movie, and I think when it lands, it's a solid 10 out of 10. It's just that there's that other 10% that does make you think, ugh. But on top of that, another thing that I think works are the environments in the movie. I think the environments throughout the film are so beautifully rendered and done and look so well. Like, for the most part, the film typically does take place in standard places, but even in the standard places, they make them look so amazing. When Shang is living in San Francisco and is fighting through 10 rings, you see just how fast, you see the bus they're fighting on rushing through all the sights as they're going downhill, everything rushing by them, and seeing how fast-paced it is, and with all the camera angles that are going with the fight scene. And then when they go to the Golden Dagger and they end up fighting outside the building, the views of the city outside and the building itself, it all just looks so damn impressive. When they go to the mountains, to the base of the 10 rings, it all looks awe-inspiring. And when they get to Talo looks damn amazing. It's got beautiful mountains, great lush scenery, all these so wonderfully creative creatures that I've heard are actually based on actual mythological creatures, including I forgot his name. Morris, yeah, including Morris. Like, all of that is just so impressive, and it's rendered beautifully, and it's rendered perfectly with the CGI. Like, you can still tell it's a little fakey, but it all looks so damn impressive, especially for the bigger monsters like the Great Protector and the Dweller in Darkness. Those monsters are so damn impressive and amazing to look at. When the Great Protector comes flying out and starts taking them out, it looks so awe-inspiring and majestic. It's so damn cool to watch. And the Dweller of Darkness looks appropriately disgusting and horrifying and malicious. Like, seeing it fly out there and start roaring, this thing is bad news even before... You know this thing is bad news just by its appearance, and and even then, and of course, there's still a lot of weight to it because you knew this thing was manipulating the Mandarin from behind the scenes, and of course, it's all done so well, and it all looks so impressive, looking beautiful and majestic and awe-inspiring when it needs to horrifying, disgusting, and disturbing when it needs to, and I think that works perfectly. And then on top of that, another aspect I like, the characters. Not only is the acting great, but the characters are all super well written with great arcs. While Aquafina is treated as the comic relief best friend, even she herself does have a little mini arc going throughout the film about how she doesn't really have a place in the world, how she just kind of jumps around from place to place while mooching off her parents. And it's clear that it's not something she's proud of, but at the same time, she tries to be content with where she is. However, when she comes to Ta Lo and they begin training her, they do kind of tell her those that don't aim for something will never hit it. It's not, they don't say that exactly, but pretty much it's analogous to with a bow and arrow. If you're not aiming for a goal, you're never going to reach it. And so it's the first time that she actually starts actually training and taking part in. So we see her actually continually training with the bow and arrow until she eventually does manage to hit her target, and we see her gradually working through that, and she thinks, "Oh my God, I actually did that," and it's really impressive and nice to see. And so when it all comes full circle, when in the final battle, despite her lack of experience, she sees the Dweller draining the great protector's soul, and unfortunately, Shang and Xialing are being caught up with something else, as Shang is doing his best to make sure Xialing doesn't get pulled off the dragon. And so we see her manage to actually land a shot with the Dweller, allowing it to giving them enough leeway to free the Great Protector and get the upper hand in the battle. It's a minor journey. The fact that they dedicate all that time to this comic relief character and done it well, I think is nice. And speaking of main characters, we also got the villain, the Mandarin. This guy is a great villain, executed perfectly. And what makes him good is that he is his status as what is pretty much called an anti-villain. Like, you know how an anti-hero is someone who fights bad guys but is all dark and brooding and is kind of close to the villains? Hold on a second. Sorry about that. I had something in my throat. I think I still do. But yeah, like an anti-hero is someone who fights bad guys but is like dark and brooding, kind of similar, and employs similar means to the villains. Well, an anti-villain is the opposite. It's someone who does terrible things but has sympathetic and understandable motives sympathetic motives for why he's doing these things. In this case, the Mandarin's ultimate goal is to break the gate, which would unintentionally release the Dweller in darkness, but all he really wants to do is bring his family back together again. The thing is, he didn't need to get Shang-Chi and Xialing in the same place like he did, with sending the postcard to Shang-Chi. Because, he made it clear he knew where they were all throughout their entire lives. He never lost track of them. But he just left them alone until he thought he wanted to bring his family back together. And he thought the best way to do that was through telling them, "I know how to bring your mother back." And at the end of the day, that's all he wants, just to bring his family back together so that they're all a whole. That's why he had Shang and Xialing be in the same place with each other. Because he didn't just want to grab one or the other, he wanted to bring them together so he could explain what he's doing, and he wants them on his side when he goes to get her. And while he does lock them up when they disagree with his plan, and say he's crazy, at the end of the day, he still wants them to be a part of his life. As when they do end up escaping to go to Ta Lo, he says, "Oh, they'll be back when I bring their mother back." He just is desperate to get the love of his life back. He doesn't want to go to Ta Lo because he hears the Dweller of Darkness will give him untold power or anything like that. No. He's going to Ta Lo because he just wants to see his wife again. That is all. And yes, he does horrible things to get there. He kidnaps people, employs these dangerous mercenaries who put more than one innocent life in danger. And when his kids actually speak up against him, he throws them aside and locks them up to get in his way. And he even says if these people don't give him what he wants, he's got to burn their damn village down. But every single bad thing he does because he just wants to save the one person in his life that saw the good in him. And I think and it's just so sad and sympathetic. And again, it shows the real strength of his actor, because throughout the whole movie, because we see him, because in the movie, we see him as he tries registering his emotions. When his wife dies, you can see just how much turmoil he's in, as you can feel like the goodness draining out of him. And and everything that was nice and sweet in his life, just all the color drained. You see all the color in his life just drained out as he realizes, I am going to find the bastards who took her away from me, and I am going to bathe in their blood. And just throughout the movie, while he does try to be there for Shang and trying to get them on, it's still clear this thing did have a negative impact on him since he began neglecting Xialing. But of course, by the end of the movie, his obsession has gotten the best of him to the point where, sorry, hold on a sec. Sorry about that. I mentioned how I had something in my throat. Well, yeah, but yeah, you see the obsession just slowly taking him over, and to the point where when he finally gets there, when his kids, he is actively fighting against his kids, and he does not hold back. He kicks Shang-Chi's ass something fierce, and if it wasn't for the Great Protector, Shang-Chi might have died. It's just like, this guy is just going so balls to the walls over the edge just because he wants to see the love of his life again. And it's so tragic and sympathetic, especially when you see one of the moments where after he locked his kids away and they ran away, and he just sits quietly, and you actually hear the Dweller speaking in his ear as his wife, telling him it's okay, it's fine, we'll all be together again soon. And it's just it's just so sad. By the end of when you see these moments, you just want to give the guy a hug. You feel so sorry for him, but then you remember the guy is insane and he'll kill you without a second thought if you look at him funny. So yeah, it's just so well done and well executed. And by the end of the movie, when he does unleash the Dweller and he realizes, oh crap, I made a mistake, his love of his family is what ultimately comes through as he sacrifices himself to save Shang, and even passes the 10 rings on to him because Shang's his son. Which, I have to probably mention this, in the comics, Shang's father was not the Mandarin. Apparently in the comics it was a character called Fu Manchu, who was the head of a criminal organization, but not the 10 rings, I think. But yeah. But yeah, that's the story there. So yeah, that's a thing. So yeah. But again, sorry, that's nothing to do with this movie. Pretty much just, it's done so well, and it's got such a great arc. And the same thing is true for Shang and Xialing. They both have their own arcs. For Xialing, it's rebuilding her connection with her brother because like I said, he pretty much abandoned her for years, and so when he finally comes back into her life, she of course is feeling distant and she of course is pissed off at him. But throughout the movie, you see them growing closer and closer again until by the end they have managed to rebuild some kind of a bond. Especially at the end of the movie, when they're riding the Great Protector side by side trying to stop the Dweller, and when the Dweller is sucking the soul out of the Great Protector, as Shang and Xialing are try climbing up the Great Protector to stop it, one of the monsters grabs Xialing and tries pulling her aside. Shang grabs her, even used the rings to tether them together, and she tells him, "No, let me go, you gotta save them." And Shang says, "No, I'm not letting you go, not again." Like, it's so strong and powerful. And then of course there's Shang's journey. Throughout the whole movie, they emphasize family and connection. And in the movie, we see how well that works together. And we see that throughout Shang's journey. Part of the reason he went into hiding is because he feels he's unworthy of his mother's heritage, and he doesn't want anything to do with his dad. So of course, he just throws both of them away to go into hiding as Sean. But as the film goes on, and his past from both his mother and father are coming back to him, we see how both are affecting him as a person. How the lessons that both his parents taught him are influencing him in his decisions. Showing him when he should fight, or what his decisions should be, when he employs his dad's methods to fight, or when he goes to Ta Lo, when he's trying to fight when his aunt is trying to train him in the style of kung fu that his mother used to take down his dad. He of course doesn't succeed, and his mother delivers. Sorry, I'm gonna get my notes again. His aunt delivers a very good line. "You are a product of those that came before you, the legacy of your family, the good and the bad." And it isn't until Shang embraces both sides of that lineage that he truly does master the art and finds peace. When he fights his father, fights his father. Just before he does, he remembered his mother and employed her methods to fight, ultimately managing to disarm his dad. But by the end, rather than take his dad out, he just throws the rings aside and finally just says, "Please, just stop." And his dad is powerless at this point as well, since Shang took the rings. And his dad's just like, "Come on." Dad's like, "I just want to get her back." And Shang just tells him, "I want her to be back too, but she's gone." And just that brief moment they have together, and that little moment manages to reestablish that connection, and it's ultimately brought Holt together when the Mandarin sacrifices his life and gives Shang the Ten Rings proper. And so it's through that piece and it's only by utilizing the Ten Rings effectively that he's able to defeat the Dweller. And so it's only by accepting who he is and where he came from, both from his mother and his father, the good and the ill, that he finally finds that peace he was looking for. And I think it's done and executed brilliantly. All the character arcs are done perfectly in this movie, and not one is wasted. Every single character has something to them that makes them compelling, and all of them make me want to know where they go. But of course, what really brings this film full circle, what makes me absolutely love it too, or is just another reason why I love it, the fight scenes. This film is great amazing with fight scenes. Because Shang-Chi is called hold on a second. Sorry about that, my dog. But yeah, like I said, it's called like I said, Shang-Chi is the master of Kung Fu, and the film showcases it perfectly. Like, throughout the whole film, he is just... All the fight scenes, most of the fight scenes are usually done in close quarters combat with high speed, fast kung fu, and it is done so damn well. Every single fight scene is so damn great to watch. They all feel so kinetic and powerful and fast. You see, and because of the fight scene, because of the kung fu, you can see just every little action that every character is doing to keep everything going. Every twist, every pop and lock and flip and jump and block and kick. Every single one of them is just so fun and intense to see. And the way the camera moves around with the action, it all looks so damn good. Let's go to the bus scene. The bus scene moves so fast paced as we see Shang just using the various kung fu moves he learned over the years to take on the Ten Rings, but then Razor Fist comes out with his giant arm blade, and we see how that just gets it better as we see, and as Shang flips, the camera flips with him. As he gets thrown outside, the camera pans outside when we see Razor Fist cut through the bus and cut the brake. We see how that affects the outside. We see the camera moving as the bus is shaking around. We see it following the bus as things continue speeding up. It knows how to keep the action going. And every single fight scene is like that. When they're all done, you feel like you need a nap. Again, going back to the Golden Dagger fight scene, they know how to keep each one diverse and unique. Like, we got the bus scene, seeing them fighting on the bus, to them having a giant kung fu fight out on the exterior of this building as they're all trying to keep fighting through the scaffolding, and more ninjas just keep popping up, going around. We see it being reflected off the building. We see Shang having to jump from level to level to outmaneuver the ninjas, to chasing one through the building and just get into close quarters combat. We see the high speed chase through the fake Mandarin, Morris is directing the group through the forest maze, and how fast they are, because if they don't keep up in time, the forest will crush them. It's just, and of course, even when things get bigger and they start employing the CGI superpower fight scenes, they all still work. Like, the Mandarin's fight scenes, of course, the fights of the Mandarin are still the same high, intense kung fu action that we saw in the other scenes, but of course the added bonus of the Ten Rings, and that just makes them even more epic. Seeing them both use regular moves, but then seeing the Mandarin creatively using the Ten Rings to act as extensions of his body, turning them into whips, turning them into blasts, having them be shields, all of them, and he uses them also brilliantly and effectively. And when Shang gets control of them, he uses them just as effectively, knocking them aside, blasting them forward, turning them into a tether so he and his dad get into a tug of war over the things. It's also fun. And again, the final fight scene with the Dweller in the Dark is just so great to see, as they all are flying through the air, as we see Shang utilizing the Ten Rings properly, as they're all fighting through hordes of more of the Dweller's monsters. It's just monsters, and even from the end when when, as Katie later puts it, when Shang did his Kamehameha to shoot the rings down this thing's throat, and just through his control, just destroy the Dweller. It's just so, all the action is just so brilliantly executed with great choreography, great movements, and great movement, great camera angles, great music. It's just all so intense, and it's just perfect. Now, but again, is there anything wrong with the movie, if you ask me? Well, I guess, like, minor things. The first problem I probably would have is that the third act does feel a little rushed, as we only barely get to know Shang-Chi in the modern day before the action picks up. But that's mostly just with having a lack of context to his actions. And once the fight is over, we do learn more about him. And honestly, when I went back to go see this movie for this vlog, that didn't feel as rushed as before, because this time I knew his story. So at that point, I had known everything about him prior to that, which explains which helped kind of further showcase his character while in the modern day working at San Francisco. So minor flaw at best. And if I have to list another flaw, maybe like the Fate Mandarin felt a little superfluous. I say a little because once he does his job, he's just there for the rest of the movie. But to be fair, I don't think it's a bad thing. Like, his actor, of course, still turns in a great performance, and of course makes the guy look like makes the guy come across like an appropriate joke. But the thing is, what makes him good though is that they know when to use him and when not to use him. When they first introduce him, he's the butt of the joke as usual, and he sticks around just long enough to act as the translator for the group between the group and Morris. But then once they do that, and we see him in the background, anytime we focus on him is just when they need comic relief. We see him acting as a referee for a game, and in the background, he's not interacting with the characters. He's just doing his own thing while they're in Tai Lo. So that's nice. And then during the battle with the Dweller in Darkness, he was one of the people in the army. But the thing is, the guy can't fight. He's an actor. So the next time we see him, it looks like he's dead. And Morris goes up to him and is like, "Morning," only for the guy to get out and say, "Oh, no, Morris, I'm not actually dead. I'm just acting. Come on, get down here and act with me." And Morris is like, "Oh, okay." And so Morris just flips on his back and has his legs just in the air. And the Big Mandarin's just like, "Oh, God." It's like, he's like, they don't overuse him. He feels a little superfluous, but they keep him around enough to know that he's still there, and when they do focus on him, it's a brief comic relief that does not overstay its welcome, and they use him well. So again, maybe a minor flaw, but not really much of a flaw. But again, I think and I guess this could be considered a problem for some people. The film, like with The Incredible Hulk, feels kind of tonally different from the rest of the MCU. This does not feel like a superhero movie. It feels like an adventure, kung fu, spiritual movie with superhero elements here and there. Like, there's still enough there to remind you that this is the Marvel Universe, because, again, we got Wong, the Abomination, in that after-credit scene, but the remainder of the movie does not feel like a Marvel movie, which, honestly, could be a flaw for some people. I even listed it as a flaw for The Incredible Hulk, but whereas The Incredible Hulk, I felt meandered a bit, and then kind of shifted gears at the final third to suddenly think, oh yeah, it's a superhero movie. Here, though, it does not shift gears at all. The tone is set throughout the whole movie, and it flows perfectly. It doesn't feel confused, and what helps carry it too is that the main characters are more well defined and more identifiable. They have clear arcs, and you understand them. They're not just character archetypes that are just there to act as the main character. They're actual characters with their own journeys. And of course, by the end, by the end, they do fight it, and it feels so satisfying to watch. And like I said, the only thing that reminds you that this takes place in the Marvel Cinematic Universe and is a Marvel movie is the logo at the beginning of the movie and the appearance of Wong and the Abomination. Beyond that, the whole film feels very much unconnected from the greater Marvel Universe, and tonally does not feel like a Marvel movie. There we have a supervillain, we got a hero, we got a villain, we've got a conflict, but it does not feel like a superhero movie, which on one hand you could consider a flaw, but honestly, I think the film does so well with the genre it's working with that I think that flaw is very excusable and does not hamper what makes the film work as well as it does. So, yeah, overall, if you ask me, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings is a fantastic movie. One of the best films in the MCU, if you ask me. Ranking up there with Iron Man, the first Iron Man movie, The Avengers, and Thor Ragnarok. It is that like it's got great character, it's got great characters, great acting, amazing action, brilliant, amazing set pieces, great character arcs, superb villains, amazing effects, and a great story that definitely makes you feel definitely hits you and has a great theme and tone and emotion to it that just overall hits that sweet spot that just hits that inner fanboy in me while also the film buff in me. So overall, if you have not seen this movie, I highly recommend going to check it out. It is just so damn good, and whether you're a Marvel fan or not, I think you will enjoy this movie. So, yeah, that's my 2 cents, and I hope that you stuck around this long for this vlog. If you haven't, understandable, but yeah. So, yeah, what next? Well, I'm still going to be doing the What If edition for the MCU perspectives every Wednesday. So if you want to see me talk more about Marvel stuff, you can go and tune into those, or just watch What If. But as for the vlog, as for future Marvel stuff, for the next 2 weeks, I'm going to be doing Kolyoko again before I jump back into something MCU related for a couple more weeks, which I'll explain when I get to them. But as for the MCU films proper, the next time we venture back into them, it's time that we look into a super team that's been on Earth for a very, very long time and is ready to step out of the shadows. So next time we meet, we're going to be seeing a group of heroes from beyond the stars with Eternals.